Hey viewers, it's Tuesday here on The Pagan Perspective. I'm your host, Cara, and this week we're talking about candle magic, blessings, centering, and smudging. This week's topics were suggested all the way back in April of 2010 by one of our substitutes, Feather, but this was before she was part of the channel. So I'm still going back to all of those old suggestions that we had from April and May of last year. I do still keep all of the ones, even if we skip them, we might use them later. 4 questions to cover somewhat briefly. They're all things that we think that people should generally know about, so thank you, Feather, for posing this question. The first thing we're talking about is candle magic and how we use it in our practice, and in short, mostly, I don't use candle magic in my practice because, as you all know by now, I'm a college student and I live on campus and we're not allowed to have candles. Now, I could be that kid who sneaks in the candles and does it really quickly with the window open, and I sound like I'm sneaking smoking, right? But no, for me it's lighting candles and incense. I really follow rules. I don't want to get in trouble and I don't want to get my friend who's my RA in trouble, so I don't use candles at school, and because I live there most of the time, I've learned to not use candles. So because of that, when I'm at home, I tend to use candles in very, very simple ways. Like, I use candles first and foremost for illuminators. I like to have just candlelight, and so I read by candlelight, and I do have specific candles for my altars that are just the illuminator candles and nothing else. I also use a lot of color symbolism with candles. If I want to get a candle out for anything, it'll be, the typical doing a spell to gain wealth of some sort in our life, so I'll use a green candle. Or I'm doing a spell that has something to do with the element of air, so for me that would be yellow. I've never actually dressed a candle, like used oil to, put my intent into a candle, but I really like that idea. I have in the past inscribed candles with symbols that have to do with the spell that I'm going to work on. But the last cool, interesting thing that I think that I've done is kind of like a 7-day candle. You perform the same spell over and over again for a certain amount of days, and you light that candle every day that you do it. This is kind of like that. My mom and I make candles. We don't really know how to make pillar ones yet, regular ones. We just do ones in jars. When you do this, you have to, or at least I found that this is the best way, is you pour a layer and then you let that harden, and then you pour a layer and let that harden. So what I've done with other candles is, as I'm adding layer by layer, I think of an intent to put into that layer as I'm going. And then by the time I'm done, I have all these different intents, or the same intent over and over, put into this candle. And then whenever I'm doing a spell for that intent, I burn that candle while I'm doing it, and I just use that same candle. The second question is, how do you do blessings? A blessing for me can be as simple as, if I'm cleansing and consecrating something, my chosen is normally to run it underwater, unless it's something that is damaged by water, and then I'll use something else like smudging, but we'll get to that later. So it could be as simple for me as running the thing underwater and saying something like, I bless this stone in the name of the god and the goddess, that it may only be used in light and love for the highest good. I ask that you remove all negativity from this stone. I don't really have anything set that I always say for things. I tend to just get into a rhythm as I'm doing it, and since I'm not doing anything right now, that came out really badly. So it's different every time, but I do always mention the god and the goddess, and I always mention taking away negative energy. If that's what I'm doing, I make sure to say that. And I always say something like that it may only be used in light and love, or perfect love and perfect trust, something like that. I always infuse it with the fact that it should only be used for positivity. So that's a simple way that I bless and cleanse things, but it could be as complicated for me as actually taking the thing that I'm blessing, or the thought that I'm putting the blessing to, taking it to the 4 corners and asking each of their blessings upon it, and then raising it up to the god and goddess and asking them as well. And that's pretty much as complicated as a blessing gets for me. A blessing could also be as simple for me as holding my hands over the object and saying the same kind of thing that I did when I run it underwater, but just using my energy to bless it. The third question is, how do you center yourself before a ritual? This one I will spend much less time on because I actually have a video on how I ground and center, which I will link you to, but it's an old video. It's with my old camera, and I think I'm wearing my headset in it, and it's kind of like the audio is bad and the video is bad, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. So basically, my idea of centering myself is to be in the moment. Like, grounding is for me to literally root myself back to the earth and where I'm coming from and keep me from, you know, floating around up in the ether. And centering for me is getting me back to me instead of back to the earth. It's me being here and now and in the moment and very present for what I'm doing. So that's the idea behind how I center. And you can watch that video for a probably really lengthy explanation of how I did it, because it's an old video. I apologize. I'll make a new video for my channel on grounding and centering that's better, but for now that'll work. And the last question is, how do you smudge? This is a smudge stick. This is a pretty big white sage smudge stick. I also have little tiny ones, but I have had this one for years. I don't use it very often. Obviously, I still have it. But when I do use it, I don't use it for long. You can smudge with a smudge stick using smoke. You can smudge with sound, which I do a lot at school because I can't burn this at school, of course. So at school I use my bell and smudge with sound, or cleanse the area and myself with sound. And I'm really glad that Mo brought this up in her video, because I never would have thought of this as being smudging. I just call it cleansing, but using your hands to clear a person's personal energy bubble, as I sometimes like to call it, their aura. I never thought of that as smudging, but it really does the same thing. It's just cleansing it. No matter what medium I'm using, I do it all the same way, and that is this. That first, I cleanse the entire space. So say I'm in this little room right now, pretend this is lit, I would go to the four corners, and I don't really say anything either. I just kind of think, drawing away negativity, infusing positive energy. And I would go to the four corners, literally the corners of the room. I don't know if you can see the corner over here behind me, but I would go around the room and take my little smudge stick or the bell or whatever and put it all around the borders of the room. And then I would do up as high as I can and down as low as I can and all throughout the middle, and just kind of try and get the smoke or the sound or whatever all throughout the space. Once the space is cleansed, I cleanse myself. I don't know why I don't do myself first and then the space. It's just always what I've done, so I continue to do it. And then when I cleanse myself, I do it the way that my mother cleansed me. We start from the head, and then go down the shoulders, down the arms, and I go above and below my arms, both sides, and then torso, around the back. And then, I know you can't see me because I'm sitting, I would go down my legs the same way that I do my arms, and go even below the soles of the feet and everything, and back up the other side, other leg, and as much as I can, I try and get, you know, my back, that kind of thing. And then I would turn a small circle so that it does get all around me. When I've done that entirely, I hold the smudge stick or the bell or whatever, do it again, and say just like a general cleansing, blessing type thing, and then I consider myself done. No matter what medium I use, I do it that same way, whether it's my hands all the way down or I do other people normally. It's kind of hard to do it all to myself, but I do it. With the bell, same thing. I ring it in those same locations, except I don't keep ringing the bell. I tend to like ring it, and then while it's echoing, do my arm or something, ring it again for the other arm, that kind of thing. I know I said I wanted to cover all of this really briefly, and this is probably longer than I wanted it to be, so thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next Tuesday. Blessed be.